Go ahead.
Sure, why not?
See how I faked them? See how, Lynn, see how I faked them out? He thought I was going to go, and then boom.
Likes to do that. Live TV being what it is. No net.
Fake
Welcome
right
to
out.
Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. We're so glad you joined us, and as promised, we've never left the studio. We just do what we have to do under the desk, look spiffy when the time comes, and we never leave you. So take comfort in that. We have a very special guest
I
tonight,
don't know
but
if that's comforting as much as it is creepy.
it's a little disturbing. But
is
you know,
very disturbing.
apparently we are a little fanatical about our jobs. We're glad you've joined us for.
Speaking of creepy, guess what? Speaking of,
Okay, apparently we're going to speak about creepy. So
I was stalking
please
Lynne Blankenbeker.
come with us down this rabbit hole.
Do you
This,
know?
of course, is the Honorable Gary
no,
Hopper,
wait.
the
So I was-
Venerable.
I was stalking our guest Lynne Blankenbeker. You know.
That's a
you know
great
what?
disclosure to kick off the show with, Gary. Okay.
I think that's illegal, but we'll see
No,
where it
it's
goes
okay.
with it.
No, you know how on
Words have power.
they do, but you know how on Facebook there's favorites.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of her favorites on on TV shows.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. Well, that rocks. Which is a perfect segue, nicely
To
done,
what?
into introducing our distinguished guest.
Who is?
Why don't you take that baton and run with it?
Our guest is the Honorable Commander Lynne Blankenbeker. I think is that enough titles, or should I add a few more?
No, that's plenty.
That's plenty.
Yes.
Who I had the honor of serving with for one term or two terms?
Well, 1.5. I won on a special, my first time.
Oh, okay. And you were the co-chair or vice chair of Veterans Affairs with
Yes.
Sir Al Baldessaro in 2013 and 14.
10 to 12.
10 to 12.
10 to
Yeah,
12.
okay, yeah, 10.
Just missed you, my
Got
favorite
elected
committee.
10,
I
you
was on
went
that
11 and 12, right.
committee. Great committee.
And you were awesome and fun.
Thanks.
Because we went on that trip up to
Oh
Canada
my gosh.
together.
Do you remember when the bus went backwards down the hill because of
Yeah.
the snow? Oh my gosh.
What?
Oh, tell 'em.
It was over Northern Pass, and we were invited by Canada to go up because, as you know, Quebec was wanting to put the Northern Pass through the North Country, and so they wanted to teach us about hydroelectricity and what they were proposing to do. And so they brought us up to Quebec for, what, 3 days, 2 days? I mean, it was a long
3
trip.
days. It's pretty awesome.
Right, and so we went.
They
and
paid, though.
They paid for it,
They paid
and
for us to go
they
up
chartered
there.
a bus.
I miss all the good field trips.
I know.
Oh, it was a wicked
they-
good field
So they
trip.
chartered this bus, and they loaded Democrats and Republicans. You know, it was bipartisan
Sure.
together in this bus, and we started the trek up to Quebec in what was February, right?
Yeah.
And we get to about Colebrook, and it starts snowing. And it was so icy and so snowy. And at one point, the bus was going up the hill, and it started sliding backwards. And there were so many people that were so afraid on this bus. And then the bus driver, do you remember this, when he said, everybody get to one side of the bus?
No, to the back.
Or to the back, so that we had all
Oh, wait
this.
on the tires.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny. So then we stopped in Colebrook, where Representative Dowdy lives.
Yeah.
Dowdy, right? And we stopped there, and there were a bunch of people that said, "Where's the liquor store?" And they ran off to the liquor store to get some booze for the rest of the trip. We had no idea they were going to either go out drunk or go out comfortable or something. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, we were supposed to go up Route 3 over the Canadian border there, but the roads were so bad that they had to take a left and head towards Vermont and go up that way. And it was kind of funny because I'm pretty sure they rented the cheapest bus on the planet. That guy couldn't have had even remotely good tires, because you got to picture this is like a good chunk of the legislature of New Hampshire is on a bus, all dressed pretty good, and everybody is told to get up and go stand over the back of the rear tire just to try to get enough traction to get up over these hills.
Both parties working
Talk
together.
about good bipartisan work there.
Yeah. This is the setup for an epic joke.
Oh,
God, I don't know what the punchline would be, but it's like a bunch of elected officials got on a bus in a blizzard.
Yes.
and then to add insult to injury, we nailed them. Remember the meeting at the Hydro-Quebec?
Yes.
They had that very well-dressed gentleman that got up and didn't seem to have any answers at all.
No, every question we asked, is there an opportunity for the cables to be run underground? Could you show us a picture of the towers? I mean, simple stuff.
And you had
Yeah,
no
no
idea.
Completely unprepared.
And then the
How many
one,
jobs that are sustainable for the state of New Hampshire?
right? No. And then what I asked him was, this to me was very telling, because this is the first time in my life that I was in a position to ask anybody that would theoretically know. Was, remember back in the this is maybe a New England thing, but I was in Massachusetts in the 70s and 80s, and there was a big thing about people getting cancer who live near power lines.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, that's been a big thing in New England. I said, but I've always suspected that the cancer wasn't caused by power lines. The cancer might be caused by defoliants used to control
Right,
the
the
underbrush.
pesticides, right.
And
Good insight.
he said he didn't answer the question, but he said that, well, we're not allowed to use defoliants in Canada.
But you can use them in the United States? What was that? What
Kind of answer is that?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he won't use them when they use.
And B, do you even know what the
Why-
effect of those are?
Yeah. Do you? Yeah. Would you? Why can't you use them in Canada? He didn't say that either.
Or,
so.
or
Right,
can you
right.
name one of them?
Yeah, like Agent Orange, for
Yeah,
example.
Agent Orange. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Did you
was-
ask
it
him?
was a good trip, though. I thought
That
it
was
was really
pretty cool.
I thought it was a great trip for getting the legislature together to get specific people in the legislature together and work together on a project that was really going to have a significant impact on the state. And I thought it really
Huge,
did a
yeah.
lot. I mean, when you're standing at the back of a bus wondering if these are the last people you're ever going to see and you're smushed all together, you absolutely learn, you make new best friends in the back of
Yeah.
that bus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
all,
did.
all those petty political squabbles seem to not matter at that point.
No, not when
No.
we're gonna die.
There were some people that were petrified. They
Yeah.
wanted off the bus.
Yeah, they did. They did.
And digging back to my 1984 psych rotation in nursing school and trying to pull out the things that were significant enough that I could remember to help talk people off the ledge really wasn't effective.
No, not when they're on the ledge.
No,
Probably
no.
too late by that time.
Well,
Yeah.
right.
It was pretty fun though. That was a wicked fun trip.
It was a good trip. It was.
But anyway, so then you left us and you went down to D.C.
Yeah. Well, no, I went to Afghanistan.
Okay, yeah. Oh, you went back to, because you had already been to.
So I went to Afghanistan.
You wait. So you'd done three tours because you were in Gulf War I,
Right.
then you went to Gulf War II, and then Afghanistan.
All right. Well, I got mobilized for Iraqi freedom in 2003. I wasn't in the legislature then.
Right.
And then in 2011, I got activated and went to Afghanistan, to Kandahar.
Okay.
And I served there. It's really funny, though. You got to think that there's not a higher being that really, manages our universe. I got deployed the day I left New Hampshire to go to Afghanistan was like June 26th. It was our very last day of session.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yes. So I never missed a single day of session for being deployed to Afghanistan. Then I was there all summer and all fall. And our first day back in session was January 4th.
Yeah.
And they needed one nurse, to go home early, like 6 weeks early or a few weeks early. And so I was like, well, I'll go. And I landed in New Hampshire at 9 o'clock at night on January 3rd.
Wow.
And at 8 in the morning, I was sitting in my seat on January 4th. Never missed a beat.
Wow.
Ready for session.
Ready
Wow.
for session. Yeah, never
Oh,
missed
I
a
didn't
beat.
know you were going through all that at the same time. Because you've come on the show before and you've talked about some of the stuff you saw when you were over there, but I didn't realize the time intricacies.
Yeah, it was like divine intervention. So
That's pretty cool.
It was cool. So I was grateful to be able to get back, and but I'll tell you, boy, did I have my work cut out for me when I got back, because I didn't have the luxury of all summer long being able to review the proposed legislation.
Right.
So I did a lot of reading in those nights, trying to catch up.
Yeah.
But never missing a beat. That's Call of Duty.
Yeah, definitely.
Right on top of it.
So then after your legislative career, you went back to D.C.
Right, because of my legislative background and my legal background, because of my healthcare background, and because I'd recently been deployed, I was sent to the
Wait,
Pentagon.
you've got a degree in nursing
Yes,
and you're a lawyer.
yes.
Why? Why would you do both?
Why not? The opportunity presented itself, and I jumped on it. So.
I don't know. I'd like to get a degree in just anything.
Well, I have to go back.
I mean, I went to the school of hard knocks, but
there's more
the
to be
entrance
said for
exam
you.
is pretty tough.
It is. No, I went to law school, so I was a nurse.
Yeah.
I went to nursing school many, many years ago, and I'd been a nurse, and I was, when I was supporting Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, I ended up at Walter Reed, which at the time it was Bethesda, now it's Walter Reed Medical Center, and I was caring for a young soldier who was a Marine, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And his wife showed up, and she was 19 years old, and she had a little baby, and she had come from 29 Palms, California. And so she looked at me and she said, "What am I supposed to do?" She's like, "I got this newborn baby. I have no education other than a high school degree. And I got a husband that's more care than this infant right now, and is never going to get better." And she said, "What am I going to do? How am I going to support my family? How am I going to survive?" And I was a lieutenant commander, which was an 04 at the time, and I was a nurse. And so lots of people thought I was really nice, but I really didn't have any clout. I didn't have any, there was no oomph behind anything. I didn't have enough letters after my name, and I was mid-level as an 04. And so I left there, and I came home, and I was working for a hospital, and I was really struggling with how do we help these families that are stuck in this situation, and I didn't really know what direction to go. And I was working for a hospital, and we had a case that was going to trial, and then I was working with a lawyer, and he slipped a cocktail napkin to me that said, "You should go to law school." And I never thought about going to law school before. And so I went back to my office, and
So most pretty women in bars get somebody's phone number.
No, I got
You got to go to.
It was the end of the case. So if I told you the whole story, we were at the case, and the plaintiff was on the stand, and one of the jurors was sleeping, and so I kept slipping sticky notes to the attorney and saying, "Is juror number 4 sleeping?" Or the plaintiff said something different on page 24, line 46 of his deposition. I was doing that, so then that's why he slipped it to me that way. It was on a cocktail napkin, because after you win a case, you go to the bar. That's kind of the rule, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I went back to my office. I Googled, how do you go to law school? I learned that you had to take a test called the LSAT. They were offering it that Saturday at Dartmouth. So I zipped over to Dartmouth, found a babysitter for the kid. He zipped over to Dartmouth, took the exam, scored high enough to get into law school. So I thought, it's a sign. I'm supposed to go to law school. So I applied, got in, got a scholarship, moved to Concord. The rest is history. But that's what got me in the legislature. Because while I was in law school, I worked for Chuck Douglas, who is an attorney who had also been a congressman, and he had a lobby practice, and he sent me over to the House one day to monitor some bills. And while I was in the House, there was testimony going on the House floor. It was Nancy Elliott standing at the well. She was testifying on an abortion bill, and it was, should they repeal the law that requires teenage girls to have parental notification before an abortion? And I had a 14-year-old kid at the time, girl.
Yeah.
So it was important to me, right? So I'm sitting at the gallery, looking down on the House floor. 3/4 of the seats were empty. I looked for where my 5 reps were supposed to be sitting. Their seats were empty. They called a roll call. My 5 reps ran in. They voted to take away my right as mom, and then left. And I thought, well, I can do a better job than this. So I stormed back to my office. My boss, Chuck, says, "Lynn, you should be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Get involved. Go put your name on the ballot." There was a special election. I put my name on the ballot. I won. And then I got on State and Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs, where I started making changes for our veterans so that they could get those benefits.
I got to ask you something before I forget.
Yeah.
Because I love your story, because it's you've got more ambition than I do. Which doesn't say a lot. But I do know how to play video games, I bet, better than you.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, so, because I have priorities. No, anyway.
And I have no hand-eye coordination, so.
Good. At least I got something going on. So, I was told by Sir J.P. of Marzullo, who is a representative-elect. He's been on the show a couple times. He's wonderful.
He won too. That's great.
Yeah, he
Yes,
did.
I know.
Yeah, he did.
And where?
And your
Terrific.
district.
That's
Yeah,
terrific.
and we went to the legislature last week. I brought him up there in my truck, and I taught him everything I know. That took like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Excellent.
quick.
Yeah. That was a long version, too. So anyway, he was telling me, I was asking him whatever happened to vets being able to just go into Concord Hospital and having a card so they can just go into the hospital instead of having to go to find a VA. And he said what happened to it was that the federal government took so long to pay that bill, 6 months, 3 months, that the hospital said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We bowed out. This is what he's told me. And I might have warped this in my brain, but I want to pose a question before you go off and tell me how wrong I am. Do you, if that is true, presuming that that's correct, is it possible to introduce legislation to have the state fill that gap between when the hospital provides service to pay the hospital and then be reimbursed when the hospital's reimbursed by the federal government, the hospital pays back the state?
I think that's great in theory, but it adds another layer of bureaucracy, and then
I know
it's going to
that.
add another layer of oversight, which is just going to make more red tape and slow the process down. They just passed the Patriot Act with the Veterans' Choice, and so I think it will hopefully be streamlined. They've worked on streamlining a lot of things. When I was at the Pentagon, I worked on streamlining the disability evaluation process so it was integrated with the active component. So you didn't have to get an exam on active duty, so that you could come off active duty, then try to go to the VA and get an exam there to establish your disability. It could all be done in one exam and done over and done with, and the VA and the active component would actually speak to one another. There's a novel thought. And as a matter of fact, the military was under federal mandate. I don't know if you remember, under the Obama administration, we were going to go to a national electronic health record. And so one of the things the military was charged with was getting a universal electronic health record.
Right.
And so taxpayers paid $4.8 billion to stand up a program called MHS Genesis. It's on the Cerner platform, and it goes across the entire Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, all those hospitals. And so we were standing that up, and the first question I asked is the VA getting this too? Oh no, the VA's going to stick with Vista. And I'm like, oh my God, just integrate so that the VA always has your record. So we did this bridge thing called HAMES, where we had to copy everybody's medical record, put it in this archival system. What an absolute nightmare. You can only imagine there are millions of medical records, right? And now the VA has also gotten on board with the Cerner platform, so it's all going to talk to each other now. So that's, I think, going to help because the medical record will be there. But keep in mind, you only get care for your service-connected disability. So, for example, I'm a veteran. I've served in 3 wars. That doesn't give me a blank check to just walk into the VA and get care. I have to have something that's service-connected. So let's say I had a back injury.
Right.
Okay, for moving patients, right, and I injured my back. I could be seen at the VA if it was an established service-connected disability at a VA hospital or for that care for back-related issues. But if I walked in and said I had a cold or I'd like, a routine exam, I'm not eligible for that. So that's not,
Okay.
So here's another example. I go into the emergency room at Concord Hospital, even though I get some care at the VA, for a cardiac arrest. They aren't going to send that bill to the VA because that's not service connected.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, so
Sure.
okay, so
it
my
has to
end-
be germane to your service.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. I thought once you served, you basically had free health care.
No.
Well, I
No,
don't
no.
know. I don't know.
No. And as a matter of fact, we used to get
See,
a
I
thing
was, you went to regular. I was involved in the drug wars.
in the drug.
I was on the losing end of the drug wars too.
Oh, yeah?
Well,
So I don't get any
So that
benefits.
was
I
you.
don't- That was me.
That was
That
you.
was you. Yeah, that was me.
So there's some veterans who are 100% disabled for whatever they may have a group of injuries or they may have one significant injury that that yields them 100% disabled, and they get all their care at the VA. There are some of those folks, and we're finding more and more as time goes on, folks who are exposed to things like Agent Orange
Right.
and burn pits and those sorts of things.
Bird what?
Burn pits.
Oh, burn pits.
Oh my goodness, that was this current contemporary war. They used to take all the medical waste, all the human waste, and put it in these big trash piles in the middle of our bases, and then catch them on fire with diesel fuel, and we'd all be breathing
Oh,
that.
that's not toxic.
No. So
That's gotta be good for you, right?
so there's now a burn pit registry. So we all have to be in that, so that if we develop bizarre cancers down the road that can be linked to the burn pit registry. But they were burning plastic water bottles and
Right. Yeah.
human waste, medical waste. I mean, it was all going up in flames.
Why didn't they put it somewhere where it was downwind?
Or create a perimeter or something.
Yeah, well, they've changed now, but that was in the beginning. We were just burning
Wow.
everything. So,
Okay.
but that kind of the VA is a very complicated system, which is exactly why we need people who have experience with that in our federal government making changes so that we make the right changes.
Exactly right.
That is correct.
Yes.
Because there would be
So-
institutional knowledge and memory, and also a certain level of core competence.
Yeah, experience and expertise.
In
yeah,
that
yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
So when you left our great legislature, you went to DC, and that's what you were working on, basically, is working on integrating all these different systems?
Right. So I went to work for the Chief of Navy Reserve, and I was working on healthcare policy for her at the time. And anything that had to do with healthcare, I would review the policy to make sure that the reserve component, the Navy Reserve specifically, could execute the policy or make changes to it so we could comply with the policy. And you think about what time frame that was, 2012 to 2015, and what happened then. We had President Obama. He was writing executive orders like crazy, and we had the Affordable Care Act that we had to comply with. So we had to rewrite policy and think about what else happened. Transgenders in the military, and so we had to figure out how we were going to handle the medical needs of the transgender population and their enormous medical concerns that they had, not just psychiatric, but all the concerns when they had the gender reassignment surgery or the gender reassignment process.
Did Obama okay the payment of the gender reassignment surgery?
Yeah, that was taxpayer funded.
Yes. So
GRS, which
and
normally
we
is elected.
had other legislation coming through. Our own senator here, Senator Shaheen, sponsored Senate Bill 777 that required the military to perform abortions. But we didn't hear about that back here in the state. Yes.
No,
Yes.
no, we wouldn't have.
Yeah. So yeah, we would have other bills like that. We had bills that had to do with electronic health records and mandates to put more psychiatrists into the VA system and in the military system. We had mandates. We had the Jacob Sexton Act and the Clay Hunt Act, and those acts were named after, sadly, soldiers who had come back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and he'd either suffered severe PTSD and succumbed to that, whether it was taking their own lives or just lack of VA care or care in general to be able to treat their PTSD. And so we had to change policy on how we managed our sailors and soldiers with PTSD. We had to change our policies on reducing the stigma of mental health crisis and suicidal ideation in the military. So it wasn't just delivery of health care, it was about everything. And
Right.
it was ginormous, the tasks that we had when we were dealing with health care. And you can imagine when we let transgenders in the military what that looked like for ships. How do you configure a ship? Who do you put where? How do you birth people? Where do they shower? When do you change their ID card to say female and not male, or vice versa?
Right.
When do you identify that person? How do we address the person? What uniform do they wear? It became very large.
And I probably shouldn't put you on the spot, but I'll ask anyway because I'm a jerk. If somebody is transgender, to me they have, and every single one that I've met so far, have had, at minimum, emotional trauma. At minimum. Why would you allow somebody in the military that already has, we already are treating men and women that come out of the military who have post-traumatic stress. Why would you introduce somebody who has already exhibited emotional issues into a situation that can only exacerbate those.
It's interesting because I don't know if you know this, but about 71% of folks who are trying to come into the military right now don't even qualify. They either have legal problems, they can't pass the ASVAB test, the aptitude test, or they have a history of medical conditions such as maybe psychiatric disorders, or they've been on psychotropic medications in the past. And let's face it, a lot of our young folks really do experience a lot of therapy and those sorts of things today as compared to our generation. And so,
Yeah, well, we see it in our generation. If a boy was out of control, it was because he was a boy, and you put him in timeout or whatever you did.
or paddled them.
Or
We got
something.
spanked at school.
Right, right. But
Yeah.
now, if a boy's acting like a boy, obviously he needs medication.
Right. And that's really hurting for our pool of applicants who can come in the military. So you raise a very good question. If we won't let you in because somewhere in your past, your youth, you had suicidal ideation, or you had an eating disorder, or you were cutting, or you took Ritalin or Concerta or whatever, now we have to get you cleared before you can come on active duty. But yet, we don't look at gender dysphoria, which is classified as under the mental health conditions as, it's called dysphoria. And so, but that was the exception. It was something that was getting passed. I don't know if it was for political purposes or if it was for equality purposes. The reality was it got passed. And once it was passed,
Now you
then
got to deal with it.
we had to, try to meet the intent of what they wanted. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care who I serve next to, as long as you care about America, you care about the flag. So the person standing next to me, if you'll serve and you're competent and capable of serving, I don't care if you're female or male, I don't
Sure.
care if you're black or white, I don't care what your interests are. But that population raised some serious concerns when it came to health care. And that's where I was working on. That's the piece I worked on. And so we had to worry about, is this person what we consider a full up round? Are you going to be mobilizable? And if you're somewhere in the gender reassignment process, they aren't mobilizable.
Not for a year, right? At
Well, it
least?
depends on where you are in the process. If you're in the process of getting the hormone therapy, we can't provide that for you in theater. If you're in the process surgically, you have to heal from. We can't send somebody with fresh wounds to, a
Well,
desert.
I thought somebody who has already gone through the transgender surgery had to constantly receive hormone treatments.
But you can be stabilized on some medications. Look at our folks who have hypertension. If you have controlled blood pressure and we send you over to the desert with controlled blood pressure, we do that with folks. Some diabetics can go to certain places.
I was going to say,
Depending on how fragile.
and asthmatic, if
And
it's
asthmatic,
controllable,
right. So there are certain conditions where we'll let people with a chronic condition, maybe daily medication, go over and serve in specific theaters. But when you're in the immediate acute process of going through gender reassignment, you're not a mobilizable asset. They tried to liken that to pregnancy. If you're pregnant, you're not mobilizable. But that's only 9 months. And once you have the baby, it's over, right? And you get your 6 weeks of recovery and you're full up round again. And so the military has accepted that. Years ago, you couldn't serve if you got pregnant. You had to get out.
Right. Yeah.
My mother, in World War II, she had to get out because she got married.
Oh, yeah?
She was a nurse, and nurses had to get out if they got married.
No kidding.
Yes. And my mom was a nurse in the Army
Okay.
during World War II. So I think, it's one of these things that we're just trying to evolve, and as we try to weigh the risk and the benefits, and for me, it really is a national security issue. Do we have the adequate force that is ready to go, that we can send forward should we need to, and can we fight tonight?
If a kid is 12 years old or 10 or something and receives Ritalin to adjust their behavior, and they stop taking when they're 14, can they still enlist?
There is, there has to be, I think there's a process, and I think they have to be off the medication for a certain amount of time, and then they have to go through a psychiatric evaluation to ensure that they don't need to be back on it.
Okay.
And that's, they have a formula for that.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that, because I had heard that once you're on it, that's it, you can't enlist, but that's not true.
No, I mean, and I think as we get, right now the military is really starting to lean out. They're looking at, you know, our warfighting capabilities. We've moved to a model of lethality, and so.
What does that mean?
You tell me.
Kill them all and let God sort them out.
You know, it's about lethality, and so, you know, what makes us lethal? Our machines, our ships, our airplanes, our weaponry, our you know, who are our fighters? You know, where's our next battle going to be? Is it going to be a sea battle? Is it going to be an air battle? Is it going to be a ground battle like what we're fighting right now in Afghanistan? And that makes a difference. If we're fighting a sea battle, we don't need tanks. We need ships.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and with what's going on with China right now, it very well could be a sea battle.
Well, I would pay attention to the Pacific Theater for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you hear that the this is slightly off topic.
For us, never.
That's a good point. That is a good point. China has roughly 2 million people in concentration camps right now.
Wow.
The
What on earth, really?
yes.
Their own people?
Yeah, I forget the name. There's a Muslim sect that is in China, and basically I think they've all been put into concentration camps for retraining.
To not be Muslim anymore?
Yeah, well, they consider Islam a threat to the Chinese government, so they've put them in concentration camps. And I forget.
Somehow I don't think that's going to work. I don't think culturally.
Well, I know that
that's
they've cracked down on Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause
But
for a
that's
while
been-
there, they
that's been
opened
true
it
in
up, and then
communist environments for a long
they're
time.
crushing it again.
I do know they're building islands out in the Pacific, in the
and
South China Sea.
calling it China.
They're building lots of islands out there where they're building things like they have little horseshoes, like coves, where they can rapidly get their ships in, and they're building major medical centers so that they're going to be able to treat their casualties and get them back out onto into the sea to fight again. So, a capability that they have there. They're building lots of islands.
So they're creating a staging area.
Yes.
Yeah. For
Interesting.
what?
You can Google map it and kind of see. If you go, it's been out there for a while. But
Is it? I mean, I'm asking you to speculate, but maybe I shouldn't. But does it look? Does it have the makings of an imperialistic initiative, or is it something else? Is it purely defensive, or do we just not know?
I'm going to tell you, I don't know specifically. I don't have that kind of intel from the military,
Sure.
So I get, I get what you guys get on the internet, so take it for what it's worth as far as internet, although the pictures are for real. But I think what we really also need to be concerned about is our electric grid, and cybersecurity and cyber war, and what that's going to look like. And that's not to say that, I mean, America's, we're pretty savvy too. So, I hope that we wouldn't come to that, because I think that would be far, at least from my limited knowledge, I think that would be far more lethal. Because in 3 days we couldn't even get gas. The gas pumps would shut down. I mean, we wouldn't be able to. Interstate commerce would be done.
All of those
Right.
gadgets we rely on, useless.
Right. Yeah, right. You wouldn't have your phones, or I mean, eventually.
Yeah, I think that was the number I've heard, that basically if the grid shut down, you'd have 3 days worth of food. Mm-hmm. That's it. And everybody would be fighting for that at the grocery store.
Unless you're
they probably
stockpiling
wouldn't be-
MREs.
And they probably wouldn't be that friendly when you got there.
Oh,
No.
no. Well,
No.
think about like what's happened in some of our communities where we've had tragedies and there's been looting, and
Sure.
if we continue with that kind of mentality as a nation, it would be mayhem.
Yeah.
I would hope that Americans would rally together rather than fight against one another.
Indeed, and our ports too are something to look at, because I've heard they can be terribly porous, and security is not necessarily consistent.
But the good news is, I think there is a good news story in this. So first of all, we have a very sophisticated military, and we have a leadership right now in this nation that I believe is on top of the future. And so I think we are, getting ourselves ready, and we're prepared as a nation, and we need to just continue to be prepared. And so I don't think it's a doom and gloom story. I'm hopeful.
Do you find, as somebody who's in the system? Tell me before I forget. I was curious because on your Facebook it says you're the commander of the Pacific. What do you?
I am the commanding officer of Operational Support Health Unit out in San Diego. So
that's what the initials were. Okay.
Right. So San Diego Hospital is a medical center. It's located in San Diego. It's Balboa. It's a Navy hospital, and it's a very large hospital. Our job as a reservist, if that hospital were to empty out, we put everybody on the Mercy, which is their platform, and floated that ship out into the Pacific Theater, we would come in and backfill. I have about 900 sailors that are assigned to my command. So I have doctors, nurses, dentists, corpsmen, pharmacists, physical therapists, dietitians, you name it, right?
Massage therapists?
No massage therapists. I wish. And we're spread out all over the Pacific. So I have a unit in Guam, I have a unit in Hawaii, I have 2 units in Arizona, and then I have, 4? I have 13 units, so 9 other units in California.
Okay.
And we're scattered out across the coast, and so we pull those resources together when we need to either deploy. I have about 26 people deployed right now across the globe, out in Djibouti and across other places. And so we take skill sets and we put them where they're needed. We partner with the Army and the Air Force for their assets, and we put the most qualified person we can at the place where we need them.
A lot of decision making.
So
you're captain, correct?
I am a captain. Yeah.
So basically, you're in charge of making sure all these people that are in the reserves are ready and able, in the event of something catastrophic, to come to basically all hands on deck, come and support.
Whatever the Navy needs.
Yeah.
Well, right now, whatever the United States needs.
So that must be really tough, because you get so many people who are constantly in flux because they're not all active duty.
No, we're all reservists. So we all have a daytime job, a Monday through Friday job, and then they do this on the weekends. And so we work to keep our clinical skills up. Like, I'll go to San Diego for 2 weeks, and I'll go work in the operating room there. That's the job. That's my primary responsibility in the Navy Reserve. It's my mobilization billet. If I were to be mobilized tomorrow to go somewhere, they would send me as an operating room nurse, possibly a hospital commander because I am a CO or something like that. But
Sure.
they could use my skill set that I work in the operating room. And that's what I did when I was in Afghanistan. I
Right.
ran the operating room there. In my operating room in Afghanistan, we had 5 OR suites, and we had I had 8 nurses. I had 4.
5 OR suites sounds like a hotel.
No, well, that's what we call them, theaters. How about OR, operating theaters?
Rooms?
Well, they are rooms, but these were pretty big because we had a lot. You can only imagine how much equipment had to be in there.
No,
but
I
had
know.
I had 4 Dutch nurses. I
Wait,
had
what's I
had 4
from
Dutch.
Holland.
I had 2
I
Canadian.
thought that was a certain kind of nurse.
No, I had 2 Canadian nurses.
Dutch oven, I don't know.
Really?
My
Yeah.
comedic mind is racing to come up with something with that phrase, 4 Dutch nurses, but
It's starting
I
to
got
sound like
nothing.
the 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
4
had
Dutch
2
nurses.
2 Canadians, and I had and then I had Army, Air Force, and Navy from all countries. We had Australians, Brits. We had, what else do we have there? Australian, Brit, Canadian, Dutch. Those were the only countries that were there when I was there, and so I was responsible, which you can imagine with the language barrier with the Dutch.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the English.
No. And the Australians, they were pretty easy, but boy, I'll tell you, we had some struggles with the Dutch.
Oh, really?
Well, they spoke better English than we didn't speak any Dutch.
Right.
And a lot of it was just you had to know your craft,
Right,
be ready
right.
to go and anticipate. based on just trauma protocol.
Right. So a lot of that, yeah, a lot of that I would think in that in particular in a operation room, if everybody isn't on the same page because of communication, that could be really bad.
Oh, they're pretty chaotic. You know, you can only imagine when you have somebody, a casualty. It was not uncommon for me to have a casualty. We had a lot of blast injuries, so I'd have a casualty that would have both legs amputated and one arm. And that was not an uncommon injury. So we had the OR teams working on, the orthopedic teams working on the limbs, but then when they have that blast that comes up like that, they get all the, the concussive injury. So you get, usually their lungs get collapsed, so you got to put chest tubes in them. So the anesthesiologist has to kind of be working to breathe for them. And, that poor anesthesiologist has got quite a struggle. They've lost all their blood volume, and so we've got to run large volumes of blood into them. It was not uncommon to give 50 units of blood to a patient while they were with me in 90 minutes. And so you're running blood through them, and then their lungs are collapsed, so you got to get chest tubes in them. Of course, we have to open up their abdomens because when that injury comes up like that, they get a lot of shrapnel into their bellies, and you got to get that out of there. So these people did not.
How the heck did you save people like that?
We had
World
a
War II. They would have
very-
just been dead.
Yep. Well,
Well, technology and know-how.
we had a very, very high survival rate, high 90s, 96, 98%.
That's remarkable.
If they came to our hospital with a pulse, they were leaving with a pulse.
That's-
And they got to Walter Reed, and we'd send them from there to Launchstool, and then from Launchstool to Walter Reed, and it was called the golden hour, and it was because of our ability. They would go out, the foot soldiers would go out with tourniquets in place, and then if they were injured, their battle buddy or themselves, they could tighten their tourniquets down just like that, so they stopped the massive blood loss. They were able to control the blood loss, and then everybody's battle buddy knew CPR and had a first aid kit.
Wow.
So they just rushed them, and then we had helicopters there like this fast. They got them on the helicopters. We got them to the, to the hospital, to the next level of care. They spent 90 minutes in the operating room on average with us, where we cleaned out their wounds, got them packed and controlled the bleeding, so that we could get them on a medevac to get them to Launchstool, where they would do a little bit more definitive surgery, and then we'd get them to Walter Reed, where they'd start their very long journey. Many of them had hundreds of surgeries.
Are you listening, Republican voters of New Hampshire? Are you listening to this? I mean,
I want
the word qualification for the job doesn't even touch it. For goodness sakes, this is the kind of experience we need in policy-making positions for for the good of us all.
Well, I think, from a national defense perspective, we definitely, I was excited to see that so many veterans had stepped up to run this time
yeah.
around,
Yeah.
because I think from a national defense perspective, you have to have an understanding of that national defense machine, the
Yeah,
department.
you also want people who are, first of all, it really bothers me that we don't declare war anymore. But if you need people in Washington, D.C. that have seen combat before they're eagerly sending young men and women into it.
Yeah, definitely. That's something you certainly cannot take lightly. It's a huge responsibility, and I think that our leadership, our admirals and our generals who are responsible for placing the particular individuals, the numbers of individuals. Sometimes I wonder, how they wrestle at night about, is this the right thing to do? And are we sending, is this too many? Is this not enough? Are we keeping people safe? Are we doing the right thing? And then, how do you make that decision in Congress or, because it's Congress?
Who was that guy JP had at the breakfast?
Oh, the General Bolduc?
Yeah.
Yeah, he served a lot of tours.
Because he was talking about that, how he had some commemorative thing he had for each soldier under his command that had
72 dog tags.
72 dog tags. Well, I think that he had them remade or something.
But that's a lot,
That is
he
a
had
lot.
he had a little box, and every soldier that was under his command. Now, keep in mind, he's a general, so he had a large area. But every soldier who was killed under his command, he kept a dog tag of, and he had 72 dog tags. And you think about that. And that's somebody's son, that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's husband or wife. It's a huge responsibility, and you can't take that lightly. And so I find it disheartening that when we have a Congress that's made up of 70% never served in the military in their life, or some ridiculous number where they've never even worn a uniform and they don't understand what that sacrifice is like,
Yeah.
to be so cavalier as to, the types of numbers of people we're going to send into harm's way.
Yeah.
And when you hold that kid dying in your arms, and you wonder who their mom is or who their dad is, do they have a family, do they have a wife or a child or a husband or whatever at home, and you're standing there, you're hanging on to this kid and they're taking their last breath, when you're sitting over there, that definitely is something that resonates with you for the rest of your life, for sure. I don't think you take life quite as, you're not quite so cavalier with other people's lives.
Yeah.
But
You're awesome.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
You
So
said,
So I had a question.
Go ahead.
You took a big step recently, and it was an extremely brave thing to do. It always is to run for a major federal office. It was a pretty interesting election cycle, to say the least, I think, for everybody
It
in New
was.
Hampshire. There were a lot of fireworks here and there. And things went down the way they went down, and that blue wave people talked about, at least to some extent, did seem to arrive. But, elections come and go, and things can change. And so the future is going to continue to have the need of people with qualifications and the level of gravity that you would bring to that arena. Have you given any thought to that for the future?
Well, I never ran for Congress because I wanted to be a congresswoman. That I don't need any more titles. I got plenty of those.
I know.
Mom's my greatest
It's
title.
getting really difficult to invite you on the show because I don't know how. The list just keeps growing.
But I really felt like that I had a significant skill set and expertise when it came to healthcare, which is a huge crisis in this nation right now. And
Absolutely.
certainly the people of New Hampshire are feeling that. And I felt like that I had pretty significant experience with national defense and an understanding of protection of foreign policy of our borders when it came to that. And so what I was really hoping to do was bring those skill sets and bring those experiences back into the public service that I've always been in for the last 32 years. I've worn a uniform for a very, very long time, since 1986. And if you count ROTC, since 1984. And so for me, it was just a matter of getting back into public service and giving back with this great opportunity and these experiences I had. That didn't end on September 11th when I lost the primary. I still have a strong desire to be that public servant. Maybe it'll be in Congress, maybe it'll be in another way, who knows? But, I feel like these were God-given gifts, and I have the health and the energy and the ability at this point in my life. My daughter is raised and she's independent on her own. I have a home. I'm not struggling, and so I will definitely give back again. In what capacity, I haven't decided yet, but I will definitely. I'm not done. I'm not done making that difference. I feel like that until America says, Lynn, we don't want you anymore to do anything for us, so go home and pet your horse or whatever it is you want to do, which I've wanted a horse for 55 years. 54, I'm only 54. But, I'll continue to find ways to serve and to kind of use some of those skills and talents that were given to me so that I can give
Well, that's
back.
the cool thing about Congress. They have to fight for their seat every 2 years, so it's not that far away, to run again.
Well, we'll see
and I
what
hope you
happens.
do.
Well, yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And let's just kind of see what happens. We kind of have to let those people that have been elected, let's see what they do with their positions. Let's see what they do for the state of New Hampshire. I'm very hopeful that they're going to work together across the aisles, just as I wanted to do when I was was running. It was my desire to go to Congress and try to work together. It's one of the things we do best in the military. It doesn't matter. We had just talked about this. It doesn't matter the color of our uniform or the color of our skin. It doesn't matter our gender or religion or our political beliefs. At the end of the day, we all come together and we do one thing, and that's fight for America. And if 1 million people in a uniform can do it, 435 people in Congress should be able to do that. And if they put America first, keeping their districts in mind when they advocate for their districts, I certainly think that we could be a better America. So let's see what this new Congress does. Let's see if they've got the character, the integrity, and the intestinal fortitude to do what's right. And if they do, then I won't need to run. And if they can't fix it, then maybe I will need to run again.
Well, one of the things that Annie Custer, who would have been your opponent if you had won the primary, she has a lot of experience lobbying for drug companies. So if anybody should know some way of making drug companies competitive and accountable, she should be able to do it.
Well, that's
And she now has no excuse because it's a democratically controlled House. It's her party in charge. They should be able to produce something that's agreeable to the Senate and to the President to do something about the lack of competitive drug pricing and things like that.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Big Pharma's gotten out of control, and if you pull up the Fortune 500 companies, you got your McKessons and your, and when we have, like Medicare and Medicaid, when we have organizations or government-controlled agencies or government-controlled programs that actually tell a patient, oh, you have this kind of back pain, you should be on this kind of opioid, let me send that to you. Like, since when did government agencies start prescribing medications? But they authorize it for you, and they tell you can have it. We've kind of gotten this mindset of fix everything with a pill, fix everything with a drug, and I'm certainly not saying that medication is bad. There are some medications that are good, and we need to continue. But they've gotten out of control for pricing. You are absolutely right. And when an EpiPen costs so much money.
They didn't used to.
I know, but but I guess it's the when you create monopolies, that creates a problem.
Yep,
and
that's what happens.
Yep, and then we've just got to get control of the drug pricing, especially when we've got people in the United States who are going out of the country to get their drugs.
Right.
You mean like Mexico,
Or Canada.
I was just actually making a joke about illegal drugs.
Oh, like illegal.
I knew you were
They're
going
they're coming over with the caravan.
Lynn,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you for
thanks.
all
It's
you
always
do
a pleasure.
for us and serving us.
Well, I need
You're
to
a
thank
super
both of
awesome
you.
lady.
Oh, thanks. Well, both of you, and you currently serving, you've served in the House. And let me tell you something. Anybody who steps up, I don't care if it's, selectmen, state house, Senate, federal office, committing of your time and your energy and your talents to making the state a better place is great. And so thank you both for what you've done. And, you guys do it for a whole $100 a year.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when we're not in office, we just talk about it all the time on TV.
But
Lynn, thank you very much.
thank you.
You're
Always a
super
pleasure.
awesome.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, same
Merry
to you. Hope you guys
Christmas.
have a Merry Christmas.
And, I guess next week, I just got Josh Moore wants to come on the show.
Oh, he's going to beatbox for you.
No, I don't want him to beatbox for
He'll
me.
probably
He'd probably
beatbox.
do
Oh,
it anyway.
he is. He'll be. I'll back him too.
Are you
You'll
going to
back him?
beatbox?
But I'll come up with something.
Oh, okay.
Come up with
No,
something.
he's coming on to talk about some liberty thing that he's involved with young people, I think, in...
He's got a great vision. Josh does, and he understands that the changes that are needed in our society are cultural in nature, in his view, and he aims to do something about that. So,
Don't you love that about young people? I like
Yeah.
young activists who,
He's a good guy.
he is a good
he's got
guy.
a lot of fire
Yeah.
in his belly. So God bless him.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, see you guys next week.
Thanks for joining us.